Hey folks, this is John Cantera, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter, coming to you with another episode of Stop the Scam. Today we're going to be talking about verifying carriers and what is the best method to do so. We've run into a couple of situations where good guys are getting boxed out. We'll get right into that discussion with the panel right after we take care of some news. So let's go ahead and get the show started.
Welcome to the Double Broker Bounty Hunters Stop the Scam. Here are your hosts, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter, John Cantera, and Dispatch Kate, Caitlin Price.
Another one bites the dust.
So nice to get started, and I love Queen to start my day. We got some stuff going on that all you drivers out there need to be worried about, so let's go ahead and get into that. For those who don't know, there is yet another storm out there in the Gulf that we all need to be aware of. And we've seen a couple really bad ones so far this year. Hopefully this is not going to be one of them, but here is what we got. This is the latest update, only about an hour old. This is Tropical Storm Raphael, and he's expected to become a hurricane in the next 24 hours, hitting Cuba in a couple of days and then making their way to the Gulf Coast. As it stands right now, Louisiana, you are the one that's in the crosshairs this time. So be prepared for that. Now, it does look like it's going to hit as a tropical storm, so it shouldn't be too bad. But that does remain to be seen. We're far enough out that anything can happen. Just keep your eyes on this one, and we will definitely be doing the same.
And just adding that there's some storms in the Midwest. There were some tornadoes today in Kansas and in that area, so just be mindful.
Cool, Jenny. Thank you. Appreciate that. I mean, hey, you know what? If it's going to happen, it's going. I'll tell you, this weather's just nuts. I'm so sick and tired of all the extreme weather. But what are you going to do? All right. So now the whole reason why I wanted to do this topic today and why I wanted our guests here is I have a carrier who's been around for 20 years. His authorities, he's been off and on with his authority because he's a cancer survivor. He's been steady for almost 2 years now. But his last Category 1 inspection, his last level 1 inspection was about 25 months ago, which means it has since dropped off of SAFER because anything more than 24 months is no longer on SAFER. So despite 20 years of experience, when someone looks at SAFER, they think that he has no roadside inspections. And I was having a hell of a time trying to book loads for this guy as a result. So that prompted the question, and it led to me putting out a post on LinkedIn. What do we need to do to re-engineer carrier selection standards with brokers so that good guys who don't have inspections aren't boxed out of the market? Because let's face it, since July of this year, DOT sent out instruction to all the way stations that they are not permitted to do voluntary inspections, which means the only people that get inspections moving forward are the ones who are observed on DOT's cameras doing something unsafe as they're approaching the way station, or they're observed by Highway Patrol, again, doing something unsafe to prompt them to pull them over. So within the next 6 to 12 months, the only people who will have inspections are those who are unsafe carriers. Yet many brokers out there exclusively will not work with you if you do not have that roadside inspection. So what is a better way to do business? And that's why we have the group here. With me, as always, my co-host, Dispatch Kate. How are we doing this week, Kate?
Okay. I'm a little bit tired today, I guess, but not really as bad as usual because we got to come back an hour.
Hey, you know, that extra hour does help, but I have to quote Dale Prax here. That extra hour wasn't for us to get sleep. It was an extra hour to fight fraud. So thank you, Dale.
Oh, he's going to love that.
We also have with us Bill Robinson. Bill, how you been?
I'm good, sir.
Okay, Kate, Jenny in a bottle. Jen Chrestman over at Tucker Albin. Always good to have you with us as well.
Thank you.
And one of our favorite vetting people out there, Danielle Spinelli at MyCarrierPortal. How have you been?
I have been good. I've been like hopping around conferences, so finally home this week. And I'm excited to do this tonight. So yay.
Well, I was having a phone conversation with Bill earlier today on this very topic. And I know he gets really excited about things like this. So, Bill, I want you to kick us off here. What is the big deal about getting an inspection in order to be selected as a carrier for these brokers?
Well, I guess the first comment, and I'm going to say relaxed. So at this point, when this started by certain individuals last year on LinkedIn, and they started coming out and saying the way you can identify a bad actor, like all of them, is by the fact they have a lack of inspections. They are taking bad MC numbers, which we know the FMCSA issues more so than anything else. 900 of them, again, I think, is what Dale and everybody showed last week. So having said that, when you started seeing what was taking place, the more these people came out and publicized it, two of them that were doing it had a very large following and platform on LinkedIn. And as a result, brokers now at this point stopped allowing carriers to work with them or take shipments with them if they did not have an inspection. What I didn't understand, and after reaching out to Joe Menton from former DOT and FMCSA and going through it with him, you couldn't just pull up and get an inspection, to your point, as you said when you started off the introduction. So all of a sudden, carriers that had been working with a company, a shipper and or a broker, for let's say 2 years, they read this post online from this person who's putting it out there every day, and they lose their contract with that company because they can't get an inspection. In the meantime, one of the people that was affected by this was a dump truck company. And they ran between, obviously, their yard, the customer, and the dump facility. There was no scales, no inspections, nothing they were going to see ever, and nor had they for 4 years. And yet they worked for this company for 4 years. Some new person comes in, reads that post, and removes that carrier, and they lose their livelihood. So these were the type of things that were going on. So the more I researched into it and dug into it, I started commenting back to said individuals. I actually at one point pleaded with both of them to stop stating this because you're hurting carriers' livelihoods, and this has nothing to do with proper vetting. Proper vetting, and if you look at it, and when I first started talking with Dale 18 months ago, almost 2 years now, working with people like Drew, I became sort of an awareness person, whether it be TIA or all that other stuff, to bring double brokering forward. The first article I wrote was in 2022. 2022. So I was just trying to get them, and I put an actual comment out and said, please stop stating this. If they check out in Freight Validate, they check out in Highway, they both come back using the way the algorithms and tools work, and they say that they are legal and fine, then why would you stop working with somebody because of an inspection? If a freight guard you read says, carrier was late by an hour, cost me a fine. That happens in transportation. What I want to know is, did that carrier call you in advance, tell you they were going to be late, communicate the entire time through it? If that's the case, then there should never have been, again, a freight guard issued, same as a carrier should never be discounted or not credible just because they do not have an inspection. And to your point earlier, John, and I know everybody's going to come in and confirm this, is it's not, you can't just pull up. Jeannie can't pull up and get an inspection. I can't. You can't just pull up and say, inspect me. So that's why I got upset, and seeing good carriers and small carriers especially affected by this, I thought it was worth commenting on.
Well, I'm glad you did. Uh-oh. Okay, Jenny, you don't have to put your hand up. You can just go ahead and
I'm
chime in.
just
Like, she's
wanted
in
to throw
class.
in.
Is this in
I'm just
school here?
I know, but I want to make sure Bill was done before I launched off because I was going to say, so I've been doing transportation collections for almost 5 years now, and I've watched the fraud grow exponentially worse year after year. So about 3 years ago, I made a note of how many bad brokers there were between the entire month of November and the first 2 weeks of December. For those 6 weeks, we're coming into the peak season, ramping up for Christmas. There's a lot of traffic then. And so, like the first year, there was 22 or something like that. I thought, geez, that's terrible. The second year there was like 56, and I was like, oh my gosh, we've more than doubled this. And then last year there was like 100 and some, and I was like, holy rock and roll, if this is atrocious, by next year we'll have 300. But anyways, about the carriers without inspection. So one of the ways that the fraud is committed is by a broker posts a load on the load board, and a carrier that is created expressly for the purpose of removing these loads from the load board. They are not a legitimate carrier. They are not a real carrier, but they look like a real carrier. They pull that load down off the load board and they hand it off to their broker counterpart over here, who inflates the rate and reposts it on the load board for an unsuspecting carrier to take. Then that's the final mile carrier. That carrier entity that first took that load will generally have 0 inspections. It will look like a pretty blank entity down there in the safety area. It will say they might have 6 trucks and they might have been in business for 2 years, but they haven't had a single inspection at all, period. And it will just be zeros all across the board, no states. That's one reason why they said you have to have inspections also, is because they saw those zeros, and that was indicative of a carrier that was created for that purpose of removing those loads from the load board to hand it off to their broker counterpart. And so that's one reason why they're looking for those inspections. However, they want them to be a truly random inspection. It can't be your annual inspection. It has to be a truly random one. And so, and the FMCSA told them you can't go and ask for one anymore because that's not random. Everybody would just go when they had great trucks, So that doesn't work anymore. And I have carriers that have hauled the same lanes for multiple years, gone 3 or 4 years without an inspection, because the DOT see them every single day on those same roads, running that same lane. They see their equipment is looking good. It's in good shape. They keep it up and keep it maintenance. You can tell that by how clean and how nice and how, usually generally, when they're rolling down the road, that they care about their equipment, that they're doing their maintenance, and they don't bother them because they see them every day. It's the ones that are come through there that are held together with dental floss and duct tape that they're like, hey, wait a minute, I better call this one around and take a look.
Well, and to add to that too, I think in the beginning, I mean, I remember whenever that whole no inspections things first happened, I was a broker at the time. And it really was like a overnight thing that you learned about it and you're like, oh, actually, this does make sense. And then as you're talking to people, it was like, oh yeah, they do seem shady. Plus they have the 0 inspections. So maybe I should stay away. That was definitely in the beginning. I definitely think it was a thing that nobody knew about. So I'm glad that person made us aware. However, they made everybody else aware, and then they made the bad guys aware. They're renting U-Hauls, going through those inspections, those weight stations. I mean, that became like so irrelevant so quickly that I don't think brokers really became updated. I still think it's a thing where like, hey, I need a notification telling me that there is 0 inspections, but that does not mean it's a no-go. It means I need to investigate further. I need to continue. I need to do my job.
Right. I would say
And I think
it's a flag, but it is not a be all end all. It's not an exclusive thing. So
yeah.
it's a checkbox, sort of like the brokers that we have found to be bad players on the DAT board. All their names, their company names are all in capital letters. That doesn't mean every company that is in all capital letters on DAT are fraudulent. It just means that we have found that all the fraudulent ones their names are all in capital letters. So it's not exclusionary, but it's a checkbox. It's it could be.
Right.
You need to investigate further.
And I do think a lot of the compliance companies out there I don't think handled it correctly because like the ones that especially are like A to F, and they completely fail people off of certain data, like subjective data. To me, that's like room for negotiation, room to talk more, room to ask more questions. And I don't think that a lot of brokers were trained properly on that. A lot of agents were not trained properly. They just saw those red flags and were like, I don't want to take a chance. Absolutely not. And that's why they're moving on and not using those type of carriers. So I definitely think there's a big like education problem with especially broker agents and not knowing how to properly vet. That's something here at MCP. We just revamped our whole training program to, fix that. Cause I think that's the biggest problem. That's why we're turning away carriers that we shouldn't.
So you think this is more a training issue than anything else. In your opinion?
knowing how to properly vet a carrier. That, I mean, having that training, that education, I don't think that's talked about enough. I don't think people share that information enough between other brokers because they want to be the ones successful. They kind of hide that information internally. So, I mean, luckily I did all that work as a broker. So whenever I came to MCP, that was like my first thing that I wanted to fix was our training program, because it was just, how do you use our system? Not, hey, this red flag means ask this question, or this red flag means do this. And I think that it's knowing how to properly vet a carrier. I mean, that you got to learn how to do that.
And this industry is built on relationships, and we need to develop
Right.
those relationships. The brokers need to develop the relationships with their carriers. The carriers need to develop the relationships with their brokers so that they know who they're doing business with. Stop looking for a quick fix to check off who's right and wrong. Talk to somebody, ask them some questions, see if they're knowledgeable.
I think it's been at the broker time for quite a while, and they've really taken advantage of that and broken off a lot of relationships with carriers. And I think when the tables turn, it's going to be hard for a lot of people. They don't
Well,
have that.
how many of those broken relationships are because of, you know, it's to use your term, it's the broker's time, or is this the advent of the compliance department, instead of being staffed by brokers, being staffed by risk management professionals who don't really know enough about the transportation industry? I mean,
Yeah, that would be an interesting stat. I would probably say 50-50 of it. You know, I think it's half people just wanting a quick buck and they make the most money out. I mean, broker agents and brokers are driven by money. I mean, I wanted as much commission as I could. But, you know, that wasn't saying that like I wouldn't, you know, once you learn that, relationships get you farther, but you have to be in it for a while. These people are coming straight out of, you know, here for a year to do this, and they don't know the whole game. So I think, and then definitely compliance teams and how they're not an actual broker first. I don't even know why they're hiring that way. That doesn't even make sense to me. But
I mean, the compliance teams are there as a checkpoint to mitigate
right.
risk, obviously. So, I mean, that's what you have to realize. When a broker says, "Look, I can't use you because you didn't pass my compliance team," I mean, people get bent out of shape about that. But I mean, that's why the compliance team is there, so the broker doesn't open their mouth, insert their foot, accept somebody that later is going to be risky and bite them. So, and the risk management team is there to mitigate that.
Yeah.
I find it interesting because our company, we are both a broker and a carrier. And when I hear comments that it's the broker's time, I'm like, I'm sorry, I have to shake my head, because brokers are losing more money than carriers are. More brokers are going bankrupt than carriers right now.
By percentage, yeah.
Where's the broker's time here, guys? The broker's time, you know, was before COVID. You know, we were in a position like, I learned, you know, I've been around a while now at 62 years of age, and I learned a long time ago. Brokers manage information, carriers manage trucks and drivers. That's the way it always was. Now, as the carriers try to get more sophisticated and grow quickly, instead they went around and they hired individuals like me to build logistics divisions for them. It was fast, cost less. So now we come forward to this. And when I get people on LinkedIn, they always want to bash brokers. We control the market. No, we don't. Shippers control the market and always have.
True.
Brokers and carriers work for shippers. We don't. We shouldn't be working or battling against each other. And at the same time, when you look at it, when carriers come out and ignore the fact that they have to have a relationship with a broker if they have no sales team and all they're doing is working off the spot market, stop doing that, first of all. Secondly, in 2020, when we saw all the things going on in 22 as well, we did cancel 4,800 carrier contracts and made them reapply. And unfortunately, with the new vetting process, 4,000 of them failed. So they may dislike us and everything else, but the 800 core carriers that have been built around Wellington over the last 10 years, they've gone from 5 carriers to 45 tractors now. They're the core partners we've had for 10 years. They're going to get first right of refusal on freight and always will. So the brokers we work with from an asset standpoint, 90% of our fleet is dedicated. 5% of it works on an open board like everybody else with brokers and everything else. But again, being a broker, we understand the relationship as a carrier we have to have with said broker in order to make it work. So Danielle, you're not wrong. We have to have the relationships because next year, when the market turns, and after one, which is, let's go with Professor Miller. He's the true expert out there with respect to market forecasting and predictions, in my opinion, humble opinion. And I do agree that I think we'll see at the end of Q1, March, April, where rates will start to finally, for OTR, move in an upward direction. Capacity will be such that shippers and brokers are going to have to be far more respectful than they've been in the last little while. But for us, our shippers don't make us run for $1.50 or $1.60 a mile. We don't pay our carriers that way. Our trucks cost us $2.05 a mile to run and operate. So why would we turn to a carrier and expect them to work for $1.45 a mile? Yes, you have to be competitive with what the rates and the market is doing right now, as we do. I don't want to move freight from Calgary to California for $1,800 anywhere that anybody else does. But until it switches back, that's what the market is, and that's what we have to work with.
It's the cyclic cycle of the market.
You are correct. It's very cyclical, and until such time, but more importantly, it's why when you look at, and I'm going to start writing again with people coming back out, when you look at broker carrier tensions, when I wrote about it, when you look at the stuff you're talking about, the double brokering, the main thing that Dale and Michael agreed with me was stop telling everybody on LinkedIn how you do things, guys. The more you tell them, one thing they have, they have two things we all need that they have. They have money and they have time. The more you tell them how you're getting ahead of them, the more they're going to use that money and time to get back ahead of us. The faster they're going to figure out, as I said and shared, and Kate wasn't even aware of it yet, but the bad guys figured out earlier this year how to get inspections added to their trucks.
Right.
Meanwhile, the legal carriers can't go and get that done. So if we hadn't spent 6 months telling everybody bad guys don't have inspections, would they have figured out a way to go and get inspections done? I don't think they would have.
No, I know FMCSA, I just met with Ken Riddle last week or 2 weeks ago. And he was saying too, whenever they added the driver's license needed to be sent in whenever there's a change, and then all of a sudden all these brokers and carriers are requiring people to send in driver's license to confirm their identity to book a load, and then all their information was getting changed. So, I mean, he was saying the same thing, like they know that they messed up on the FMCSA side. I mean, it's happening everywhere, and people are just all scrambling to try to figure out, a game plan. So I think definitely before things do switch up, you need to have your clients team up to date. Your team needs to know exactly what they're doing. But also, like you said, how do we communicate that throughout without giving away all of our secrets? And to me, that is just knowing educational wise, like what questions to ask. Because it is, I mean, this is a human element to it. I mean, you're talking to these people, whenever they're taking a little bit too long to answer this and that. Some of that's instinctual and you can't really teach that, but it's something that's something that, like, I as a manager should be teaching my new agent on how to do these things. Or, hey, did you hear how this guy sounded right here? This is a red flag. Let's ask this question. So a lot of it is instinctual, and that's harder to teach, I know, but there's got to be a way. I know Dale Prax came up with that. I can't even remember what it's called. He has so many different things out there, but one of the things where, he verifies who you are in order to join that network, and it's a social media network for just brokers who are verified. Maybe it needs to be something like that where we're verified.
It's called Freight Club.
Freight Club, thank you.
Correct. Yes. So I did a poll and a post with Dale because my ideal world to stop the challenge would have been to have a private community, private load board, private insurance, private community, everybody be vetted. And of course, with Dale's software, with the facial recognition, everybody would go through that process. So only good people would be dealing with good people.
Right.
So when he sent me the note and the email and then called me, he usually calls me once a week, or I call him. When he reached out and said, okay, well, there you go. Freight Club has been started. And he did a post with my name on it stuff. And, it was kind of flattering, but more importantly, it's all Dale. But getting back to it, if you look at it, when you look at the algorithms that Dale uses, that Highway will use, but mostly Dale's facial recognition, watching Ken on the show 2 weeks ago when you were with him, and then he was now just down at the Carrier Broker Summit. If they do release the facial recognition, yes, Dale, they got it from you. At that point, they release that in Q1. That will remove a significant amount of fraud. That will remove the virtual dispatch offices. That will get rid of a considerable amount of challenge with respect to fraud that the FMCSA is creating already on their own. So that will help, and that will also help with this silly notion that an inspection is going to stop you from hiring a bad guy. Because now they've got the inspections, the others don't. So coming back to it again, using MCP and Freight Validate is going to figure out who the good ones are over your own instinct or gut on an inspection, frankly.
Right. No, I agree. So, and even like what you said too with the FMCSA having that facial recognition, I mean, the biggest thing too that people are adding into their vetting process is they have to be in business a year. Well, 366 days doesn't mean that they all of a sudden turn into a good guy. So another thing where, just because we've put these weird stipulations in that don't really make sense because you're not properly vetting. I think that's, the biggest thing that needs to be talked about is whenever you have, this is a newer carrier, I do need to treat them a little bit differently, but it does not mean I don't work with them. Same thing with that inspection data. I mean, to me, no inspections mean you cannot prove to me that you actually have a truck. Like you could have stolen a VIN number off of whatever, and that's what you gave FMCSA. So it is a red flag to me, definitely, but it's not, a tell-all. And I know like Highway, MyCarrierPortal, we have different things in place where like ours at MyCarrierPortal is a VIN verification. I send you a text to the driver. You send back a picture of your truck showing your VIN number. You prove to me that you actually have a truck. You're standing there with your truck. That's more important than an inspection. I mean, you could have gotten an inspection 6 months ago and then sold that truck and now you have nothing. Or you,
Correct.
Got that U-Haul that's a straight truck that cannot help me with my full truckload. But people don't look at the whole data either. So anyways, yeah, to your point, I think it's where it's a lot more than just a yes or no here and there. It's, knowing who you're dealing with and knowing how to ask questions.
Well, and to John's question or point earlier, I think training, and Danielle, you touched on it, Jeannie touched on it, training the individuals that are going to be doing this and limiting who has the ability to vet and turn on carriers is something that broker agencies, 1099 brokers, that type of those type of things, they have to make sure that they're letting their back end do all of that so they don't create challenges for themselves and or their shippers. I do know a lot of the 1099 agents, and they do let their company do the back end. They do work with companies like either Highway or Freight Validate and MCP. So those bigger, large houses, they already have all of you guys, and in a lot of cases, they have every one of them in place in their company.
Right.
Not just they have all three of them operating because they've got the money to do so.
What's interesting to me though is with those big companies is that they will just have like a certain team working on them and that's it. I'm like, to me, the actual person selling the load should be they're on the phone talking to these people or they're emailing directly with these people. They have a better sense. They should be doing that initial vetting process and then coming to that compliance team with, hey, I know that this guy has ABC wrong with him, but I did, XYZ to vet them. And this is why I'm presenting my case as to why I should use them. I think taking that part of it and then the compliance team is just basically double checking instead of doing all that work because they're not talking to these people, these compliance teams. So I don't know how they're even able to properly vet. I'm sure they turn away way more good carriers than stopping bad carriers on a day-to-day basis because they're not having that conversation.
So when we talk about validating the VIN numbers, that only works to a certain degree. Taken from Alex Lockey's article, Drive on April 25th, 2024. First of all, I was granted the second instance of transparency by the FMCSA against Uber. And the bad players in that situation were Delta Dune and Maroon Trucking. This Maroon Trucking was written about in the week following or the week before that transparency happened. And in this article, it said, that Maroon Trucking, 5 of your active carrier customers had an inspection under this specific VIN number, listed VIN number, within 18 days at the same York County, South Carolina inspection station in August of 2023. The wrote Bannon report. 3 of these inspections occurred within 4 days of each other by companies headquartered across the country in different states. The same VIN number was the sole inspection for Maroon Express occurring in July of 2023. A look at the inspections history associated with the truck's VIN number revealed an astounding 15 inspections between July 10th, 2023 and September 18th, 2023. In August 2023 alone, according to the rundown on the brokersnapshot.com website, the VIN was associated with 10 inspection reports, 9 of them in South Carolina. So, furthermore, the VIN was for a medium-duty international, certainly not the right sort of power to pull a 53-foot reefer trailer, and so on and so forth. But this just goes to show that some of this fraud runs deep. It runs deeper than just bad carrier players. It goes into, I mean, this had to have had some coordination by some DOT officers or even the scale house or something. Because how else would you have that same VIN number across multiple companies in a short month of, few months span? So, and one other thing I was going to point out was I had a carrier that was hauling for Ryan Transportation, and he factors with RTS. They're part of the same network, obviously. And he hauled a load for Ryan one week. The very next week, he got a load. The broker called him back and took him off the load and said, "You can't haul this load." He said, "Well, why not? I just hauled for you last week." And they said, "Yep, but you don't have any inspections." So I called Ryan to try to get clarification on it, and the broker told me, "Well, it's our opinion that when you become a year old, you've run enough freight in and out, interstate crossing state lines, that you should have been pulled in for inspection. We find that the average for carriers is being pulled in for inspection is once every 3 months when you're hauling across state lines." So that's the standard that Ryan was using. He even factors with them. He's been factoring with them for a full year, hauling for them for a year. But once he turned a year old, once he hit that 1 year mark, he didn't have an inspection. They kicked him off, said he couldn't haul for them. So.
Oh, that's crazy. And I think drivers need to know too how to combat that. Like whenever you're told that by a broker, what do you say then? I mean, you can be like, "Well, I am a good guy," but it's like, I think, so pretty much whenever I went to that broker carrier summit 2 weeks ago, that was part of the conversations I was having with carriers. Well, what are you doing whenever? Because honestly, everybody at that broker carrier summit is going to be a good guy. They vet them prior to. That's part of Dale's part of it. And so we're not talking to bad guys there, but like, hey, what are things that you're doing whenever you're told, "Hey, I can't use you because of whatever"? Like, what are things that you say back? Or do you just say, "Okay, bye," and you hang up? Because then if me as a broker, whenever somebody was saying, "No, actually, I can prove this, and this, I can do this, and this," then I'm like, "Okay, I'll give you the time of day." Not every broker is like that. I know that. A lot of them just move on to the next one. But I think that's another thing too carriers need to know is how to, and I don't have the answer, but that needs to be something I think carriers need to discuss and figure out a way to, I guess, like have their battle card on what they say back on whenever they get those objections. Because it is a sales process,
Since there's no way to definitively make sure that every carrier gets an inspection within 2 years, that can't be a bar to measure against. I mean, that makes the market unfair.
Even the director of FMCSA said that Ken Roll, he's like, that literally is, there's no way we could possibly inspect everybody. We don't have enough people. There's no way. Yeah.
They can't inspect all Swift.
Right.
Never mind add
Facts.
UPS, and how about the 110,000 OIDA members? I mean, like, the list goes on. That's why inspections is not the right way to do it. At least the one thing that Jeannie is referring to, our good friend Chris, aka Tim Bannon, in the Bannon Report now, at least using VINs and inspections showing there's excessive is showing how these bad guys are getting access to it when the average carrier cannot. So,
and I think verifying the VIN
what
too.
Questions do we? Sorry.
Go ahead, Danielle.
I was just going to say the VIN verification part. I think it depends on how you're actually verifying the VIN. If it's simply off of inspection data, like for instance, that carrier that you were talking about, if it's showing on multiple things, it shows on our side that this VIN has been associated with X amount of inspections. We don't have enough data to tell you exactly who it is because of this. And then we're also pulling in ELD data to tie it in to try to get a more accurate answer. So I think, like, for instance, that VIN verification thing, to me, if I was a driver and let's say I knew the broker, I'm mainly just saying this because I'm with MyCarrierPortal and I know all my stuff. But if I was a broker, I knew that that's who they were using. I would be like, "Hey, send me that text. I'll send you the VIN verification. I'll show you where I'm at right now. Let's, I'll do all the things to do the verification part on my side," and just being openly compliant about it and not, and sending that picture in right away. And, that would be if I was a driver, that's what I would do. Find out who they're using and then go through their vetting process.
So what questions can we be asking? That's what we need to be thinking about. What things can we be verifying to make sure carriers are legitimate? Then they're not without using the VIN number, without using inspections. What are things that come to mind that would be a question you would ask to vet your carriers?
What's something that you
I think that's the $10 million
Right,
question.
that's what I'm saying. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm not asking Danielle specifically or Bill. I'm just saying in general, that's what we need to be figuring out here together collectively is what questions can we ask? What would be a legitimate
But I
way
don't
to
think
vet
there's a
them?
one. I don't think there's a one thing
I
that
don't think so
seals
either.
the deal, because as soon as we say there is one thing, then they're gonna figure out how to change that, and then we'll be at this all over again.
It's sort
So
of like
I
So
do think it's
BCS team, this needs to be a panel for the next BCS conference. Okay.
Yeah, 'cause all the-
be sure to invite me, jcanterra.vigilanttransport.com. Thank you very much.
So
But,
we'll have to tag them in this.
when it comes down to it, there was a comment made earlier that we don't share information. There was a 10-point checklist that I actually put out and shared with other brokers. It's one of the things our CEO, when you look at it, listen, I never wrote anything in my life. He actually pulled me out of a comfort zone. So instead of just coaching and mentoring in our own company, I might be able to help coach and mentor our industry. That's why I started writing. And then when I started seeing the challenges that were really happening to carriers and brokers, I thought I'd write with respect to that and see if maybe we could help bring some common sense to some of it. But more importantly, instead of just being that awareness guy saying, here's the problem, here's this problem, here's that problem, I was trying to find a solution, reaching out to people that might have all the answers and solutions that you're discussing and looking for. The reality is that every time we think we're getting ahead of them, and knock on wood, we haven't had an incident at our company in a long time. But by the same token, every time I think we're getting ahead, something new comes out. The phishing, the using this, the
Right.
similar things.
it's like bank robbers.
Yeah. Then you look at it, Jeannie, I don't think you
I
maybe
feel like
have
they're
it.
way more smart than bank robbers. These guys are something
I'm
else.
just saying, if these people would use their time for good as much as they are for evil, we would have a kick-ass industry. I'm just saying.
They might cure cancer. You're right, but in the meantime, I remember when Bannon put out the one post with the VIN number, and these people are actually getting loads sent to them by brokers that the VIN number belonged to a Jeep Cherokee, a 1988 Jeep Cherokee or something like that, or 1998, and these guys were issuing out loads to them. So, keeping in mind, some of these things we'll smile at down the road, but each case there was one common thing that I will share. I'm not going to go through all the 10 points on a public podcast. But slow down. There's no load that important that you can't build relationships and ensure you've done the vetting process correctly. If you're not using a vetting platform, shame on you at this stage.
Yeah.
It is something that can at least protect yourself. And initially, when you put that MC number in, when it comes back with a red X, don't proceed. Those are the things that, when you look at it, the cost has come down so much on one of the vetting platforms. And there's my buddy Dale now. When I go to the background, I think first question is, are the violation stage? Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind our lawyer friend.
But that's
But
part
he's
of your
right.
red X thing. If he has it where they violate the law, that is a red X.
Correct.
So that is,
But that should be your first and foremost. What you're looking at is if they're in a virtual office. You know what? I'm going to go into the wrong things. If they are breaking the FMCSA rules and regulations, then that is the algorithm that Dale is going to use. And therefore, when you enter it in there, it's going to come back with a red X.
Right.
By the same token, there's certain cautionary things that are having to be used. Dale's is all based on algorithms. When you look at the last time I was on with Highway, they have some subjective things, but I understand it's what their community is asking for. The people who are their largest subscribers, they want them to include certain other aspects. If your MC number just changed recently, they want a flag coming up. Now, if the FMCSA tells the carrier that you have to change your MC number by this date, and that means you have a recent change, and you're working with a company like DHL, you may be precluded from getting more loads because your MC number just changed because they use the highway software, which will put a flag up.
And I think flags are fine, but I don't think we need to use some common sense behind that. Don't make
That's
that
what I was
the
gonna say.
be all end all of everything. Make sure you ask the questions. Take time, like you're saying, to slow down. Take time, like you're saying, to ask the questions. Get to know who's hauling your product.
Correct.
Yeah,
Talk
at
to
the
them.
risk
See, we're
at the
dealing with
risk of
humans
sounding
here.
like at the risk of sounding like a plug here for Freight Validate, one of the things that I love about Freight Validate is if you do get that red X, there's a way to change it. You know why you have the red X and you can fix it. Where unlike Highway or RMIS or Carrier 411, if you have a flag on there, one, half the time they won't tell you what the flag is for. And two, there's no definitive means of actually fixing whatever that flag is. That's one of the things that I love about Dale's product.
But yes, he's obviously he's watching us currently right now. So to Danielle's point earlier. So to Danielle's point earlier, you do have to, when you have certain things that are becoming too subjective, you do have to contact the carriers and develop a relationship. That's why I'm saying slow down. Do those things appropriately. Never mind the fact that
don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask them.
Mm-hmm. One of the things we do with a lot of our cross-border and domestic carriers is they come in our office after going through the vetting process and meet with our team. They get to meet the people that they're going to communicate with on our side and vice versa, go through SOPs, go through how we do load tenders, go through how our process works, our payment processes work. So, again, I don't think we would have carriers and partners over 10 years if we didn't have them come in the office. We didn't spend the time with them. I know that we're always going to agree to disagree on certain things, like dispatchers may start a relationship in our company with a carrier reaching out to them, but no, they do not have authority, and nor are they going to be the person that's going to vet that carrier. It's going to come into one of four people. So that's how we currently do it, and that's worked for us. I do recommend when most people reach out to me that they set up the right structure and they set up the right tools to make sure that they're vetting the right way.
And just like we say for brokers that ask carriers questions, if carriers are saying to you, "Hey, I'm not the bad guy. Look, this is what's going on," listen to them. Don't have you don't have to believe everything everybody says, but take a minute and listen to what they're saying. See if it sounds reasonable and just. But also go with your gut. If it sounds fishy, it might be fishy. You might not have that care. But I mean, some people just can't get an inspection. So if they're telling you why they don't have an inspection, I run the same lanes all the time. They don't pull me in. Or one lady said every time I go by our scales, they're closed because I run predominantly through the night. That's when I drive as part of our team. I don't get pulled in. So listen to what they're saying, and if it sounds reasonable, maybe give them a try.
You know what, Jeannie? You know what the problem I think right now is, and what I think I'm going to talk. I'll probably talk to Dale about this one a little bit offline, but I'll share what I was thinking with you guys now. One of the challenges that a lot of carriers have is when they're taking shipments from a broker, they don't have necessarily the tools, especially if they're an owner operator on the road all the time, to vet that broker properly, to make sure that they know who they're dealing with. Have a tool that says, like Freight Validate. Dale's making that available. Says, hey, you can do that portion of it. But how do they vet them from financial standpoints, that they can actually pay their bills, that they're going to pay?
That's why I do due diligence for all of my carrier clients free. They can call me up and say, "Hey, Jenny, what do you see about this client? What do you see about this broker?" They give me the MC number. I have a factoring company that lets me use their days to pay. I do a full Moody's Cotera credit report on them. I check their SAFER to see how long they've been in business and if they have had any involuntary, revocations. I go out to the Google reviews, to Bizpedia reviews, and to the DAT reviews, and see if there's any instances where they've had reports of non-payment or bad behavior in the past, and I report back to that carrier immediately.
Well, that's fantastic. That's awesome. I hope you connect with me on LinkedIn and that I can help promote that, because more carriers need that, because that's where their biggest challenge is, in my humble opinion. I also think when it comes on some of the aspect of it as well, is the carrier also has another challenge right now, right? Freight crowd, Dale. One of the other
He's always there. He's always watching.
Go plug Dale. Go plug Dale.
I was going to say, God, give me a second. So if you don't have freight credit and you don't have Jeannie on your side, But the other thing that the carrier is at a disadvantage of is he's now delivered. The load he thought he was getting to come out of Illinois to go back to Kentucky is now canceled. And he's trying to find something to keep that truck moving. That's why when all of a sudden he goes on to that load board and he sees the load coming out in the broker, he's less likely to have that vetted to the same extent that you're going to have now. Hang on, I got to copy and paste something to my notes here.
Well, and I think I was bringing up this at the Broker Carrier Summit too, where if you are hearing the broker vet you, that is a good sign. If they're like not giving you any slack for anything and they're not asking any questions, that should be a red flag that you're working with like an illegitimate broker, because carriers are mainly getting the biggest, to me, screwed over than brokers are. We're just hearing about the most because brokers are losing the most money on it, and losing customers over it. So yeah, I to your point, it needs to be that carriers are vetting brokers just as hard as brokers are vetting carriers.
Exactly.
Now, what I don't know is there a list, a checklist for carriers to use to vet brokers? I mean, I know what I personally use when I'm vetting a broker, but is there a checklist out there that's published for such a thing? And I'm more than happy to write an article on this one. But I mean,
I was gonna say, sounds like Jeannie has all the things. Her list was like extensive.
And when I get those emails in or I get those phone calls in, I try to drop everything and do that because I know people are probably trying to get a load, so they're trying to vet that broker pretty quick. So when I see one of those emails come in, I will stop what I'm doing and grab it real quick, run it through the paces, send it right back out so they can try to get that load. So.
For those who need to get a hold of Jenny to take advantage of this free service of hers, here is her information on the screen, and I'll make sure this comes up again before we sign off.
And let me just throw in there, and in case you've been taken advantage of by one of those bad players, I can get your money back for you too.
Hey, this is my show. I do that.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Wait, that's the Double Broker Bounty Hunter and Stop the Scam. It's a wonderful show.
Actually, Jen, for those who don't know, Jen and I have worked together on multiple cases. We've had situations where she has not been successful in dealing with something where I was able to be successful, and vice versa. So there have been times that we have partnered in dealing with issues. So feel free to contact either one of us.
We don't just market on collectible and move on. We market on collectible and pass it down the road to the next person and see if they have more luck.
Yeah, because we want the carriers to get their money. Well, actually, we want whoever's owed the money
Brokers
to get their
sometimes
money.
get messed over by shippers. Factoring companies want to stand for their clients. So, I help all entities in the transportation industry recover the money for unpaid invoices.
Okay, we're going to hold off on the plugs again. And
sorry.
Until we get to the end. But, again, the whole point here is what should we be doing as a community, as an industry, both brokers and carriers, to make sure that the good guys are getting the freight. That, at the end of the day, is the $10 million question. And again, guys at BCS, this would make a great panel.
Right, there's
ran by John. Way to plug in. You said no more plug-in.
Hey, it's my show. I get to do that.
There are lots of Facebook pages and LinkedIn posts about bad brokers or bad carriers. So, when you see those, make sure you note them down and add them to your list. I mean, there's a lot of broker alerts and broker lists out there. I used to put one out, but I just find it's not complete and comprehensive because somebody else always has one or more and one more. So I just say every time you see one, make sure you add it to your list. If you're a broker, add the bad carrier players. If you're a carrier, add the bad broker players, and just avoid them when they've been noted as a bad player. That list will be very much worth its weight in gold.
I would also say take it with a grain of salt. We have seen these lists and we've seen accusations of bad actors, whether it be brokers, carriers, shippers, whatever, being posted out on social media when it was really a retaliatory attack. Okay, so everything we see out there, if you see it on social media, take it with a grain of salt. And yes, that includes this show too. Take it with a grain of salt. Take it at face value. Do your own research. Okay. The good thing about everyone here is if you want proof of what we do, we're happy to provide that. Okay. You need Danielle to get you a demo. She'll do it. Dale's doing demos right now. That's why he's not on the show today. So we put our money where our mouth is. I don't think you can say that about the rest of social media.
Wow, you just broke my heart. So if I read it online now, I can't believe it anymore. Damn.
No,
I was gonna
no,
say
you
just
can't
because it's on the
believe it.
internet
Can't
doesn't
believe
make it true. I mean, I'm a Victoria's Secret model there, so you know.
Hey,
I love
Gene,
that.
listen, nothing's as bad as on Friday night, two young guys coming in the industry, and John told them, go start an FMC. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's the industry you're going to send them after? Go deal with the SSLs and MVOCCs and ocean liners? Why don't you like these people? What did they do to you? They only graduated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I gotta tell you, steamship lines are not my favorite people in the world. I can tell you that after my working in maritime for as long as I have. But wow, those are some great individuals. I'm glad they did that show on Friday, and I really hope they get the best out of that. I hope they do that more often. I'd love to see them out, guys.
Right, and I think it's a great way to do it. And to answer your question, again, I'm going to say slow down. Get yourself a vetting software, carrier or broker. The price at this point is not beyond anybody's reach to protect yourself. More importantly, like I said, with respect to Freight Validate, somebody said, well, it's $169 a month. I said, right, you get pinched once, that's $4,000. Is the $169 a month not worth saving the thousands of dollars you're being hit for potentially in claims and or lost freight? I also will share that from the insurance scams going on between the bad guys, the double brokering, all this stuff that's happening, the cargo theft. 10 million. I think it's more like probably going to come in somewhere around $8-9 billion.
Yeah, what you're saying with the insurance agents too is very interesting, because that's something that we caught on too, is that the carriers, because they submit in their agent names and then we go get the certificate. Well, we've always vetted the agents as well. Well, they've been creating like fake agencies. I mean, they look legit. They have all these things online, but they're not nationally on like the database. And if you don't have access to that database, how in the world would you know? You would not know. I mean, everything else looks legit. So that's like a huge new scam thing as well. Hopefully that's on social media. I don't know, but I've just been hearing about that one.
Yeah. So one thing about insurance, because I know it took some insurance people over a year and a half to reach back out to me to say we finally understood behind the COI. But if you're a broker and you're not looking to see the exclusions in insurance contracts still, when you're hiring carriers, you're going to get pinched.
It is a matter of time, and you need to know questions that you need to ask, whether it's insurance or whether it's whether or not a carrier has the right items to be able to operate as and they follow FMCSA regulations. And that's where you get some stuff like Freight Validate that can fill in some of those gaps and give you a quick response. Because let's face it, what Dale does, he puts information at your fingertips where it might take you quite a bit of time to research that for yourself. Okay, that's good. But that's only part of the issue. I've had brokers come to me and ask me, okay, what would you recommend I do? Well, the first thing I say is Freight Validate. Okay, but it's a multi-layer defense. So you want to make sure you also layer in, and yes, I'm plugging for you too, MyCarrierPortal. Okay, so once
it's all together now.
Layers,
so once
you have those layers in there, you have the two layers, and then there's one last task, and that is verification at the shipper. Physical verification. Put your eyes on the side of that truck. Okay, if you do all three, you're looking at a very high chance of success of your cargo getting from point A to point B.
But getting the shipper to do that.
I want to cut in there.
Challenge.
So I've seen brokers have that brought up to them, and they say that they're not going to do that because that's asking too much of their customer, and that customer would then maybe not want to work with them anymore. And in my head, I'm thinking, but wouldn't they appreciate you like wanting to be safe? Or
the answer is no, Kate.
Nope.
Really, educate me on this.
Let me ask you this question, because everybody said a couple things. What do you do when you're a company that ships 200,000 loads a year?
I mean, I
How
used to
many
work.
people, think about how many people you would have to have in our company right now to do certain things you're suggesting.
And then why would they need a broker?
Now, hang on
On
a
top
second.
of it, here's the
Back up.
other thing, Kate, that I'll share with you. That the people aren't writing about on LinkedIn how they got burned by this, but they're saying, they got to do this, they got to do that. In the beginning, you know what they did? The shipper went out and looked at the trailer. The trailer matched the carrier. They loaded. Nobody
Okay.
walked out to the front of the truck, especially in the middle of winter in Wisconsin or Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're
Now,
actually
what
asking the
about-
shipper to walk 60 feet out, take a picture of the truck with the name on it and a driver with his thumb up. That's what I read 2 weeks ago.
Well, not only that,
about-
but you're asking a dock worker that gets paid minimum wage to do this. They're like, I have my kid has a game in 5 minutes. I could care less. I'm trying to get out of here. I mean,
I can't speak for
getting
I can't
everybody to
speak for-
comply is going to be.
Walmart, 3PLs, Kroger, they use, at that point, lumper services. So they don't even work for the company you're delivering to. So it's not, again, the best way to ensure. Now, if you're going to move 40 shipments a month and you want to call every shipper you work with to say, I want you to do this extra set of eyes for me, and they agree, that's a great stopgap.
Or if you're going to exclusively work with shippers who are small enough to be able to handle that. But if
Now,
you're working with large volume shippers, that's not going to happen.
But how
I did
many
not
of
stop
those
to think about
people
that.
who wouldn't do that, who would refuse to do that, have like these massive companies that maybe put out very, very expensive, high cost equipment that they ship? How many of those have been potentially their freight has been stolen, and something as near as that would take care of it? So I've worked in shipping. Granted, I worked at a small factory. We literally loaded one truck at a time, but I had to physically go out there and stand there with the driver while we loaded the driver. Sometimes I had to load the driver. I had to get my ass in the forklift and go and load the truck. But if I didn't have to do that, I at the very least had to stand there with the driver. Sometimes you're talking about an hour and a half that I had to sit with somebody. And I can.
I bet
very-
your at your facility your stolen rates were very low. But I do think that shippers, they know they're going to get paid. The broker's
don't
going to
think
want
that
to
ever
stay in business, and they're going to write a check. In the end, they're like, I think it just depends on the shipper. There's so many shippers out
by
there
the
of
way,
different sizes.
That's the reality of the biggest problem, Kate.
Yeah.
Is the shipper knows when they hire the broker, if something goes wrong, the broker's insurance is going to pay.
Yeah.
That's why they're signing into a contract and doing that. But Kate, here's an example. So one of the customers I work with, I'm one shipper in their location going cross-border. 10 loads a day. That's what I have. Never mind the rest of the people. How do we check or get them to go out when they're shipping 30 loads to 40 loads a day to go and check all of those tractors? Their answer is, we'll hire somebody else. Thank you very much for calling me, Bill.
Yeah.
It's understandable. I get that. I did not stop to think about the large volume. Warehouses that
depends on
I've
the
run in
shipper,
my
though.
career.
Correct.
I'm sure it does.
Like
I'm sure it does.
Kate's example,
I just feel like
Kate's
that's a
example
such a big
works.
thing. Like that's you're shipping out your product that is super expensive in some cases, in a lot of cases, and you're okay with it just like going to whoever, you don't care. I mean, if it were me, I'd be like, okay, I kind of want to make sure that this person's worth a fuck.
Well, Kate,
I get it that it's a
not
matter
wrong.
of practicality too.
correct. You're not wrong. It's a matter of the SOP and being able to physically do what you're suggesting for
Mhm.
high volume shippers. More importantly, Danielle said it perfectly. It depends on the shipper whether you can actually use it or not. But by the same token, the higher volume shippers, they have gate check in and out. They have cameras and all that stuff. So if a bad actor got in there, he's going to be on camera everywhere. So it's different. It's just, again, when certain times people reach out and say the solution is to do this. Okay, well now go out and ship 200,000 loads that way. How
Now,
do
I
you do
do
it if
think-
you're going to do it that way? Never
Now,
mind now you're going to ship 44,000 shipments like TQL does. Or
Right.
440,000 or 4 million. or
Those
whatever.
massive companies can afford to have one more person that they have looking at that shit. That's my opinion. If you're a massive company, if you're a Walmart distribution center or Kroger or whoever, Come on.
But think how much for Walmart, for instance, think how much money they've lost and stolen things because they wanted to get rid of some people at the cash registers. You really think they're going to hire more in the warehouse?
Well,
I don't know. I think it's,
shit doesn't get
but
stolen.
Kate, the reality is that they just raised their compliance fines. So where they were charging $550 for an LTL order that was damaged, they'll charge $750. And the carriers will still pay it because they're the largest shipper in the United States. It's the same as like I had a shipper who was working with a carrier. A challenge took place, and the carrier says to me, "What do I do when this happens?" The shipper basically told him, "If you want more business, you will not charge me for this." And that's the other thing is right now you're talking about these certain things going on, Kate. The large shippers and brokers, and especially when you look at the big brokers with all the money, they're starting to use AI now. I don't know. I'm waiting to hear from one of my VP friends over at CH Robinson who've introduced this to find out.
I know they've been doing that.
Because so far from some of the carriers I've heard from and one of the carrier managers there, instead of the carrier having rounders like they've had for the last 3 years with CH Robinson, they're now AI is only selling them one-way rates. They have to quote both ways now because of AI. Is it going to be? I think if anybody using AI and stuff, CH Robinson has the volume and the experience as a broker first and foremost to see if this will work fully and properly. In my opinion, we use some AI for certain aspects in our business. Our CEO won't replace bodies for AI. That's not going to happen. We have added bodies in the last 3 weeks, not reduced any.
right.
And clearly, there is a lot to unpack when we have these big questions, because this is a philosophical question more than anything else. A lot of companies out there, large and small, have to figure out best ways to protect their cargo, and it has to be in a just-in-time fashion. I think we all can recognize that. And whether or not we can come up with a stable way to put everyone into a cookie-cutter mold so that we can vet carriers quickly, good carriers can just stay on the job, and bad carriers are always pushed out, that is going to be a multi-million-dollar question or $1 billion question that somebody out there can capitalize on. For right now, the best stuff that's out there, you're looking at Dale Praxis product through Freight Validate. You're looking at MCP. And I'm not just saying that because you're on the show. That we don't have sponsors. I actually believe that. Okay. But I think when you have that combination, you got a really damn good start. If you have the ability to physically verify, I think that cups it all together. But hey, to your point, yeah, the big shippers, that may not be feasible. So how do you handle it? Cameras are a good way to have it. At least you have a historical record, and you know who at least has the cargo when it goes off the yard. Now, once it's off the yard,
I was going to say
we'll
my
see.
plugin. I'll finally do my plugin today. My plugin is with the. So we just got acquired by Descartes, and so MacroPoint's coming in to play with MCP, and really that's where I think you kind of where the shipper part of it. Yeah, you want them to check everything. Well, this is kind of how you sort of kind of get that way. This is how you see exactly what's happening to the load once it actually gets loaded. They have alerts built into MacroPoint to where if they're going off the route a little ways, that you get notified. If it looks like it's going on rail, then you'll get notified. If the number's being spoofed, you get notified. Like just a bunch of different ways that they have it as far as a tracking standpoint, and then putting that all together. So like within MyCarrierPortal, we have Freight Validate in there as well. So seeing right up front about how Freight Validate looks, but then also seeing, okay, how many times has this carrier tracked? Like if this carrier's never been tracked before, especially like on MacroPoint, like a ginormous tracking system, if they've ever been tracked before, or if their tracking compliance is super low, or because their tracking compliance goes off of like if they track for a minute and then they pop off the tracking, then they'll have a low tracking compliance. So getting all those scores into one place so that you see everything before you even put them on a load and send them a rate sheet or send them a contract to get set up. To me, that is going to be the best way to see a whole 360 on a carrier. I don't know how else you would, honestly, without sitting there in the truck with the guy. But that's my plug-in.
Which is one of the reasons why I wanted you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yes.
By the way, absolutely love the fact that you guys are now doing 2-factor authentication on the setup packages.
Took us a minute, but we had to figure out how to do it.
I first encountered that last week, and I was very happy when I saw that happening. So
yeah, our hardest challenge with that is we've been in business for 12 years. So having so many previous people in our previous carriers already set up with us, how do you convert them over without, having a billion calls come into our help desk? So I think we've figured that all out, and now that's active because it's been active with new subscribers going on it's been a minute now. But for previous ones, we finally just got that all figured out and everybody sorted through. So yeah, thanks for acknowledging that. It's exciting.
Well, we are up at the top of the hour, so we do need to wind down. Danielle, you got anything else you want to add real quick?
I think that's about it for me. I was waiting to do my plug-in, and here I am. But yeah, I'm with MyCarrierPortal, Danielle Spinelli. Look me up on LinkedIn, or MyCarrierPortal, or Descartes, all on LinkedIn. Yeah. Okay,
Jenny, we got your information on the bottom of the screen. Any plugs that you want to drop in here?
Just if you need help validating a broker, if you want to know what I can find on them, if you have worried about it, just give me a call. That's a free service I provide to my clients. And if you need help recovering money, whether you're a carrier, a broker, freight forwarder, or factor, I can help you out.
Awesome. Bill, what do you got?
Well, I guess I'll say, Wellington group of companies, you need freight to be moved, certainly reach out and I'll connect you with the right individuals if it's not me. I guess for plugs, I'll plug your show.
Well, thank you.
The Broker Hunter. Obviously, Logistics Lounge is how I met you through Beefcake and Potato. So that would be one thing, I guess.
And speak of the devil, he just dropped in.
Yeah, he's always been there for a second. And of course, one thing I will say, when I first met Dale Prax and we first started talking, Dale never once did this or did any of this to start off to monetize. Dale was a broker that understood and recognized the problems. He is tied for the smartest person I know with respect to the FMCSA rules and regulations. And seeing what he did and being able to be a part of it from the grassroots and watch what he's done, I'll plug Dale any day of the week because what he's done for our industry and the amount of money he's put out personally to do this is, it's stupendous, frankly.
And how much he's working directly with FMCSA to make real changes that nobody else is doing that. Yeah.
Dale, in case you can't tell, you have a lot of supporters here.
I feel like this is the Dale Prax show, actually.
We might take that under advisement. Kate, what do you got?
Nothing really. I'm going to throw together something for next week. So I'm going to have a little piece of my own to share. So hope you guys tune in because it'll be interesting.
Yay. Is it going to be juicy?
Juicy to me.
Just something about the way you said that, sorry.
Well, I just I know some of her issues, so I don't know which one she's going to be putting out there. She has a lot of issues.
Juicy to me. It'll probably be juicy to you too because you're in the business.
Maybe we should use the word challenge. Challenges are easier to overcome than issues.
Well, we certainly have a lot of challenges that we are investigating over here at the Double Broker Bounty Hunter. I know I've got a couple of new brokers that we are investigating. We have a couple other carriers we're investigating, as well as some of the international bad guys, and we will be doing shows on them. We know that OIDA is looking to come onto the show to have some discussions with us as well in the near future. We're just trying to coordinate schedules to make that happen. So we definitely have a bunch of interesting people that we are expecting to be showing up in the coming weeks. With that being said, please remember to like and subscribe to all of our social media outlets, not just for Stop the Scam, but also for the Lounge Media Group, which includes Tow Truck Tuesdays, Stop the Scam is live every Monday, 5 p.m. Central on all of the Lounge Media Group social media outlets. And if you ever need to get a hold of Kate or myself, here's our information: Jay Cantera at vigilanttransport.com or kprice at rockdovefs.com. Like all the panel members here, we're here to help anytime you need it. So be sure to take care of yourselves, stay safe out there, and whatever you do, don't let scammers take you for a ride. We'll see you next week.